Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very latest CADS podcast. We may all be smiley and happy and jolly, but inside we are deeply, deeply upset and bitter people right now. We're feeling it, everybody. It's hard, but we're going to talk it through. We're going to commiserate. We're going to find some common ground between us, and let's just see how it goes. We've got three people to join me tonight, so I'm going to go around the other way. Hey, John, how you doing?
Fine, how you all?
We got Charlie with us. How you doing, Charlie?
I'm good, mate. I'm freshly shorn and ready to go.
Yeah, I'm feeling quite jealous. I need to get shorn myself, but hey. Ashley, how you doing? Looking as dapper as ever.
Yeah, thank you. Charlie. Charlie who? Hey, if you ask me about the game, I've only got positive things to say. So all the other stuff, I just blocked all that out. So I've only got positive things to say.
If we're going to stick to only positive things to say, this may be quite a short podcast tonight. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So are we going to talk Liverpool first, or are we going to talk Aston Villa first, or are we going to talk pressure, or what do you want to talk about, guys?
How do you feel about things right now? What's your take on the overall situation? How can you sort of how do you feel about everything right now? How do you feel about the club?
Yesterday I was feeling a lot more down than I am now. I've had a little bit of time to cogitate on it, to give it some thought. I was not at all surprised that we went out to Liverpool. I would have preferred to see a little bit more of a fight. I think we went out fairly tamely. The Aston Villa game, within a minute we were down, and it just was like, oh, it's going to be one of those days. And honestly, they just ran through us at times. But having had the chance to think about it, back over some interviews and some of the stuff that's been talked about, it just backs up my initial thoughts on what the players looked like, and they looked absolutely knackered. And then you've got to remember that over the last few months, we've started having to drop further and further back. We've had to try and play a different kind of football. You know, we're not able to play that high pressure, high press game that we want to do from the front, because those players are not available. And so you need to train the players you've got left to play in a different way, except the players have no training time because they're playing every 3 to 4 days. So how do you manage to, marry those two things up? We need to train, but to get this new system in place and make us look a little bit more competitive. But we can't train because we're playing every 3 days, and basically all we can do is just cool down, manage any injuries that may come along, and maybe talk about tactical stuff. But getting out on the pitch to run anything through is probably almost impossible at this point. Now, apparently we've got 5 players coming back over the next week and a half, and those 5 players could make a major difference. I believe Solanke's in there, Brennan Johnson, Vicario, Udogi, and one other whose name has currently escaped me.
I don't think it'll be Solanke. I think Solanke's not due back until sometime in March.
Anyway.
Okay. I thought Solanke was in that list, but I could well be wrong. But anyway, we're starting to see players coming back in positions we need them. We've seen some new players come in. We've seen some reasonable starts from them. Not amazing, but reasonable. And I just think we kind of got to stay the course. I don't see that changing manager is going to do anything right now, because any manager that comes in is going to have to deal with the same injuries, the same squad, the same players. We've set up a squad to play in a certain way, and changing it, well, you're probably going to end up with a lesser manager. They're not going to accept a 6-month contract. So you've got to find someone that's probably not as good, someone that's available, and probably give them a 2.5-year contract. And it just sets us even further back, I think. As long as we don't get relegated this year, I think we just take it, we bite the bullet, as Ash said right at the beginning of the year, bite the bullet and just develop. That's me. So what about you, Charlie?
Well, I think we should give Ange a new contract.
Me too. Another 2 years.
Because if you can survive if you can survive this, then you can survive anything. I mean, for me, I'm just curious now because I don't think there's been. I can't remember a Premiership manager who's actually got through worse. Um, Something as bad as this. It's remarkable that it doesn't feel like there's much pressure on him at all. And I think that says a lot about the club. I think it says a lot about him, and I think it says a lot about. I don't know. There's a special situation happening at Tottenham right now, and I don't think anybody really knows, obviously, what's going on deep in the club. But I think, having gone out of 2 cups in 1 week, I think he would have been fired by now had he not, had there not been some underlying idea that he does get these 3 years. I can't see us changing in the summer. I can't see us losing even a couple more Premiership games and him getting fired. We're not going to get relegated. I think that people are very sort of, they can be quite hyperbolic about the relegation fight. We're not in a relegation fight, and we are spread thin, and that has to be understood. And I think that Postecoglou at this point, he's really thrown every single card he can at this situation. I don't think he can do it anymore. And I'm with you. I don't think anybody anymore at this point. I certainly don't want Ryan Mason involved. I think a lot of people are seeing those guys as the reason. We may have mentioned this in the last cast, but like the backroom staff maybe sort of, if we have like dead weight in the squad, then we probably have dead weight elsewhere in the club. You look at the medical team. We see that there's a LinkedIn ad for the new chief medical officer. That feels very messy to me, and that worries me more than the playing staff and the manager right now. Is like, how have we got such a crazy injury list, given the sort of the facilities that we've got at the club? I think that this whole situation we're in right now is pointing fingers at people and places in the club that you wouldn't usually have fingers pointed at. And I think that's got to be a positive thing. I don't know if Daniel Levy has total say over every single department in the club. It feels to me like he's quite controlling over literally everything. And I think that more than getting Daniel Levy out, I think we need just a complete audit of the club in terms of how we recruit, who we're recruiting, and how a club that's 8th richest club in the world can find themselves in a situation where we play like we did, the last week, which was just abysmal, really. And I don't blame the players. I don't blame the manager necessarily. I blame the entire thing, and it's not good enough to just blame the manager or the players. You got to blame the entire club. I can't believe anybody's at that club right now. Anybody has any job satisfaction, because no one's doing a good job. Literally no one. I mean, there's some players out there who are doing a good job, the best they can. Are they doing a good job? Probably not. Is Postecoglou doing a good job? Not by his job specification to win matches. He's not. No one's doing a good job right now at the club, and that is seriously worrying to me. And if there's not like a mass audit of the club going on right now, there never will be. Because if you fire Postecoglou and they bring in Pochettino, which just sounds like there's mutings around that idea. He's the only coach that will take that role now, come in and take the role gladly at Tottenham, unless we go for somebody completely unknown, which I don't think we'd accept. So if we don't do a mass club audit right now, then we never will do one, because we've gone through the darkness of this season, last season. We have earned the right to take a good look at our club and go, why are we constantly failing? And I've got theories around that, and they're getting echoed through the media right now. There is a softness of culture at the club. It is a pandering. It is like a health spa in that place. I'm sick of videos of ping pong. Of people playing ping pong when they're not playing. It disgusts me. Give me damp, wet walls and wooden benches to sit on in the changing rooms, and you'll find a team that plays better than a pampered team with heated seats, in their boots. So I'm just I'm a little bit, and you know, we can get into this. I wonder what your guys' thoughts are on any of that.
Okay, right. Before we go, John, I am going to come to you, but I'm saving you to last because you've got, I'm pretty sure, a slightly different insight to us. The rest of us have to rely on what we see on TV. You are in the ground every single time there's a home game, and you get to see what the players are doing and how probably just a better idea of how much gas is in the tank among those players. So I am coming to you, I promise. But Ash, what are your thoughts?
Charlie makes some very, very, as he often does, great observations and insights. And that softness aspect, which goes back to Alex Ferguson, lads, it's Tottenham. I think it has been there for a while. And I think as much as we love him and 150 goals, Sonny is represented of that, reflective of that softness. He's not a leader like Rodri is or Odegaard is, or any of the guys, Van Dijk is, I don't know if we have that. I know we had said last summer, Charlie and I were talking about moving, Cudi, who, as we all presume he's on his way anyway, to the midfield and make him captain. So that softness is definitely there. Maybe that softness also reflects in the type of people that we buy and bring in. It would be great if we had a bunch of 11 Coco Lamellas, Apparently, Poch said he changed, or one of the other guys said, maybe it's one of the players said, the way he went about in training Coco, because he would just give it all in training and also be dirty in training, that he changed the way that Poch's teams played because he had that sort of spite and stuff, as indeed did Delhi in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely the softness, but positive. We started 4 teenagers yesterday, which I thought was terrific. How else are you going to get them to develop and grow unless you play them? And I would continue playing them because some of these guys, even though some of the ones coming back are soft. Brennan Johnson is soft, James Maddison is soft, we need a different type of player, and it may well be that Charlie's right about an overall audit. It's been a while. The last time we won, John would remember, a bunch of cups was under Birkinshaw in the early 80s. And we actually went down after his first season. And we didn't sack him. We came back up the following season by the skin of the teeth, I think on the last day. And then Birkinshaw came here and he met up with LA Spurs. He was great. He was just charming, informative, hung out with us for hours. We took him he and his wife to dinner. And he said what changed it was, he went to Argentina and went to go see Arce. And Arce said, yeah, I'll come, but can I bring my pal, Ricky, And then we had some young guys like Hoddle and a whole bunch of young guys, probably mostly English, if we look at the stats on it. And we won 3 cups. We went to one other final in those from 80 to 84. That was the last time that we had any consistency and some cup-winning thrills. And there was also a spine, wasn't Roberts, Mabbott, weren't they still there? I think they were. Perryman. There was some strength and spine there, and we are lacking that. And an audit might be, I don't know if we'll actually do it, Charlie. Do you think it'll actually even happen? Would be great. But I did see positive things. Yesterday, the 4 young guys, Kinski, after that horrible mistake, was actually pretty solid after that. The rest of them are just, there was a shot of Sonny, and he was breathing, and he wasn't even running. And I figured that guy is just going to collapse, Yeah, he's lost it a bit. He can't be playing every game because it sort of ruins what he still has, which can be valuable. So yes, a bunch of things have to change. for sure. But they're my team, and I still love them.
All right, moving over to our man in the ground. John, tell us your thoughts.
Oh, look, firstly, my views have changed over the last month or so. But just talking about where we are right this minute, and it really annoys me how the media, particularly, this perception, and you hear them say, yeah, but look at the team Tottenham have put out. So look at that team should be good enough to have put up a good fight against whoever we've played. But then completely forgets that we've had these injuries, right? And in fact, Ange was going on about this today as well, and he's totally right, that we've had these injuries, which means that we've played, sort of Thursday, Sunday. That's how he said it, and that's completely right. And the players, he can hardly rotate the team, and those players are done. They haven't got the energy. Plus their confidence is low. They've got a battering from Liverpool, and then they play Villa. Within a minute, they're a goal down. You can see why what's happened. We got so desperate to get fresh bodies in there. And it's like as soon as one player comes back and another one goes. However much we might think Richarlison is a bit of a waste of space, he was still somebody we could have had up there. And now he's out. And it's just impossible. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm of the opinion now that I think, and I've said this on one of the chats we had yesterday. Look, personally, I think he'll be gone at the latest at the end of the season, and he probably would go earlier. But who's going to take who have they got in mind that would take over at this particular stage of the season? When you think about it, whoever takes over is going to have that same problem with regards to not having a fully fit squad. It's just a mess. It's just a mess, and I can't see any more. And maybe the only one who could possibly do it and prepared to do it would be, as you said, Pochettino. But my personal first choice would be the Bournemouth manager if I had my own pick. But he's unlikely to come until the end of the season. That's how I see it. And one other thing, I've tended to back Levy, not because I'm a Levy lover, because you're either a Levy lover or a Levy hater. It's not that, but I can see a lot of the good things that he's done. But I don't know if you can remember when we had the farewell to the old White Hart Lane. There was a video that he put on, and he was talking, and he said that he is just a custodian of the club, right? And obviously he has a lot of shares in the club, but at the end of the day, he is just a custodian of the club. We're all part of the club. Without us, what would the club actually be? And I think it's come to that time now. I think now it's been depressing going to the ground. I mean, I'm hearing these stupid songs about Kulusevski and Levy and all that. I can't stand it. But it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think all he can do is find somebody else who's prepared to take the role on and get the club moving again. It's depressingly seeing what's going on at the moment. That's my view. By the way, I went to both Anfield and Villa Park, and it was it was just terrible. Awful.
Well.
Okay, so from your point of view, someone who goes to the matches, someone who gets in the ground, just the players. I mean, are we seeing the reason we're not seeing the same level of intensity? Is it because the players aren't putting in the effort, they don't want to play for this manager, or because they just do not have the physical capability to do it?
I don't believe. I'm not saying that all the players think the same. And some are not playing for him. I mean, I get the impression that maybe Maddison isn't so keen on Ange, but by and large, I think the players are still playing for him. But it's just the fact that for nearly over 2 months now, you had how many 13, 14 players he's been able to shift around. And they're knackered. You see Kulusevski, he's got nothing left to give. The guy's done. The guy's done, and it's and anybody who tries to say, well, these players are rubbish and not giving their all. I mean, how much can they give? It's people go on about Bournemouth. Well, Bournemouth have had a load of injuries, and that's true. They have had a load of injuries, but they haven't had to play 2 games a week of high intensity. They've had the luxury of playing 1 game a week. Frankly, we've got this little break between now and the Man United game, and then we've got another sort of break next week as well. But we can only hope these players can come back. But I mean, they're not going to be up to match fitness, match sharpness right at the beginning. Man United is look, Man United is a very important game because I think if we can win that game, it just puts us completely away from the bottom, and it just it maybe puts the emphasis more on Man United and the problems they've got than the problems we've got. But the media, Ange was going on about an agenda, and again, they're trying to say the media are trying to say he's claiming there's an agenda against him. I don't think that's what he was saying. I think he was saying there is an agenda about the club, and that's there, and because it's good for the press to have that kind of story, that narrative going along, and it plays into all these people that hate Levy, etc., and don't like Ange. All the Spurs fans, it plays into that narrative, and and of course all our rivals, they're having a field day on the back of this. That's how I see it.
So last year Newcastle had a pretty bad run of form. Newcastle had bad injuries. I do not remember this level of intense scrutiny from the press at the time. It does seem that Spurs seem to be, and it's probably because we're London based, it does seem that Spurs seem to be picked out for extra special treatment and become almost a bit of a laughing stock when things go wrong. When things are going well, it's like, oh yeah, well, just wait until things go wrong. It's like waiting always for the other shoe to drop. But when things go wrong like they currently are, it's like, well, this is what you expect from Spurs. So yeah, I can definitely see what Ange is going on about. And there has been a few comments recently, he'd be taken a lot more seriously if he didn't add the word mate on the end of every sentence and things like that. It's like, oh, come on. That's just not necessary, is it? Somebody said on social media, I haven't checked this to be true, but somebody said on social media, Richarlison, since he came back, he played 7 games in 21 days, which is on average a game every 3 days. Now, I know for a fact he didn't play every single minute of every one of those games. He started out by coming on as a sub later on, and then he was coming off after 55, 60 minutes. But I think that just shows how badly we're having to bring players through and get them active as quickly as possible. We've got such a tight squad that the players aren't able to do proper training. We're not able to rotate them, and we just don't have the numbers. I mean, you've got to think they've got to be calling up kids from the 18s, the under 21s, just to be in first team training, just to make up the numbers, because we don't have enough players to play 2 5-a-side teams. It's nuts.
You saw that. I presume you saw that. You saw that chart where it highlighted that the number of teenagers that have played for Spurs this season is more than double the nearest person, which was Arsenal, and then the others were even less than that. No, look, it's not because we want to; it's because we have to. And and again, people have, in truth, they've not been our problem. I mean, really, one of the bonuses this season has been, Gray and Bergervold most part after a slow start. He's been very, very good. And it's the more established players, particularly the last 2 games. I mean, Son, Basuma, Bentancur, they've been pants. They've been pants. But do I blame them? I just keep saying, it's just too much that they are desperate. We are desperate for a break. Unfortunately, and that's the fact.
The other table that's doing the rounds at the moment is the number of minutes played by specific players across Europe, and of the top 20, we have 7 players in the top 20. We'd have more if we'd have more if Solanke hadn't got injured, if Vicario hadn't got injured, because we've just had to play these players just constantly. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you've got Pedro Porro and Kulusevski at the top. You got Son right behind them.
This is why it feels like there's an agenda. There's no agenda. It's just that they know that Spurs are struggling, and I think it's easy to kick someone when they're down. And Spurs are quite reactive like that. We've shown that we will fire managers quickly, but I think this is a great moment for us because we haven't fired the manager. We are suffering without pulling the easy, going the easy route and firing the manager, because I think that it's become completely aware that we can't do that anymore, or Levy has, and get away with it. He's played that card too many times. Don't know what the in the stadium thing, John, but it just feels like the tide has turned. You're saying that the Kulusevski song is getting sung more vociferously. I don't think he's ever going to leave the club. I think that hopefully there's another sort of structure that can come in where he relinquishes a certain amount of control and just takes care of the financial side of things. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But he seems to have control of literally everything. And now in terms of the media, I mean, if I hear another journalist poke the bear with that second season jibe again, I was there. I remember hearing him say that, and it wasn't him who came out and said it. One of the reporters came out and they said, "Hey, isn't it interesting that you win something in your second season, Ange?" And he's like, "Yeah, I guess it is, mate." And over time, it sort of evolved into like you always said you win something in your second season. And I think he'll get up one day and thump one of these guys because he is right at the end of his wick with it. He's just done. These guys are so lazy. It's like they're just poking the bear. Such a.
I don't think is it laziness? I just think it's they're trying to make a story. They're trying to make an issue. And you've obviously got more of an insight into what he actually said, but that's the impression I got. He didn't actually say that. It was in response to somebody to what somebody asked him, and that's why he's come out with it. And of course now they keep on repeating that. They keep on repeating that. The media have got a lot to answer for, and of course,
God, I'm with you.
Go on.
Sorry, carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go on.
Well, I'm just with you. It's just they seem to just and all these big pundits as well. They've played football. They know what it's like. 2 games a week was easy when you were 15, but like when you're playing top level competition in the Premier League, and your manager is asking the very basis of Ange board is to high press, and everybody presses after that. To run around, it's no wonder we've got so many injuries. That's a side issue, but ultimately we can't play the style of football the manager wants to play if we don't have heavy rotation. That's why we're in the middle of a painful, quote unquote, painful rebuild, is because we need the players that Ange needs, and he's only halfway through the process of getting those players. To fire him now just be, crazy. And I know you think he'll be gone by the end of the season. I just don't see the point at the end of the season. Unless I just can't see him that being, why would you, unless you were, okay, Ange, just stay in the role right now and we'll find someone by the end of the year, unless it was that kind of thing. I think we're only going
to. Do you think that the Ange way can succeed in the Premier League?
I definitely do, yeah. My biggest problem, John, is the injuries. Same last season, this season. I mean, I think with younger players in there, it'd be a bit different. But there's some issue that must be resolved about the injury thing. We can't go through that again. We're playing a second team, and you see Liverpool's second team. They got beat by Plymouth yesterday. So it stands to reason that we're right now we are knackered. We're playing two games for 2.5 months, 2 games a week. It's just that's the story, and it's not about Ange. It's not about. It's like
that's what makes me angry when I hear Gabby Agbonlahor, I can't say his name. Going on about the point is the 11 who took the field, whatever game you want to say over the last couple of months. On paper you say yes, they're reasonable players, but they're not in tip-top condition. So you're not seeing them at their best. It's impossible to see them at their best because of what's being called for them. And and when you get, I've heard Clive Allen was talking today, and something like who's got insight and he spoke well. And I thought, yes, because he understood the situation and going on about their, about their energy levels and lack of confidence and stuff like that. And of course, Ange himself was saying something, and you could say he was getting really fed up with the whole thing. But this media thing, it gets on my wick. Actually, it gets on my wick. I try and not listen to it, but you can't help it. You can't help it. If you live and breathe the bloody club, which I do.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I have found very interesting, I mean, there are 2 podcasts I will listen to on a regular basis that I think actually give a fairly balanced view on everything. One is the Oh So Spurs podcast, and I'm going to come back to it in a minute. The other one is The Game Is About Glory. Both of those are going like, well, there are reasons for what's going on. These are the reasons, and it all comes across as very, very sensible and reasoned. But as I said earlier today, it's boring to continue to come out with the same stuff time and time again. It's boring to state the reasons why we're struggling. It's boring to come out with this stuff because you've heard it before. Like, reality is often, and truth is often, boring. Fiction is fantastic. Fiction can be exciting. Fiction can be bold. But the truth can be grey and a little bit boring and a bit unhappy. But if you have a listen to Oh So Spurs, they've done a recent podcast where they talked to Anton McElhone, who was the head of sports science or sports development when Ange was at Celtic. And they asked him the question to say, is he a good manager? He's like, he's one of the best managers I've worked with. And he's worked with Conte. He's worked with Redknapp. He's worked with Pochettino. He's worked with some very, very good managers. And he's saying he's the best manager I've ever worked with. And the reason he's the best manager is because he trusts the staff he works with to get the best out of the players. He's overlooking everything, but he's putting trust in the people around him. He said the problem at Spurs right now is numbers, is bodies. In some way he seems to have been let down by the recruitment staff because we've lost players who have left the club and we just haven't replaced those numbers. Or if we've replaced them with teenagers. Those teenagers I do happen to like quite a lot, but also, at the same time as that, we've been hit by this epic number of injuries. And we just do not have the number of players that we need to rotate in and out of the side to try and keep everybody in tip-top shape and fit. And it's just killing us. It's just absolutely killing us.
Well, the fact is, Man City or Liverpool, if they had the kind of injuries that we've had, and we're not just talking about injuries that are off for a week or two, they've been off for like 2 months. And if they had the same kind of injuries, particularly in 1 or 2 kind of areas, right, they would struggle. We've already said about what happened to Liverpool yesterday. So they would do, but as you said, it doesn't. It's not what the media want to play out. It's like we're in turmoil. We are in turmoil because it's like this spiral that we just can't get out. But anybody who's got who's sensible about this kind of thing will understand. In many, it's not the only reasons, but we can understand the reasons why we are in such a mess. And it's just, as far as I'm concerned, for me, what I see for the end of the season, if they keep Ange, or even if they don't, I mean, to me, the to get enough points to stay up, right? But the priority now, to me, is all about the Europa League. So hopefully, by the time the Europa League starts again in March, we have most of those players back, and we can give it a really good crack. And then it'll be, it will be an amazing season if we can do that. Whether you think Ange is the right guy for it, I don't know. But I just can't see who else could take over right now and do anything different.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be perfect storm.
Like you, I think Iraola's a good manager, but I don't think Iraola has managed at this level. Obviously he's managed at Premier League, but he's not managed a club that has the kind of expectation that Tottenham does.
Pochettino didn't, did he? He did a good job.
No, neither did Ange. I think Ange is handling it well. But the issue I've got with Iraola is Iraola's got almost as many injuries as we've got at Tottenham, with half the number of games. So if you're going to complain about Ange's training, and apparently Ange isn't the one doing the training anyway, so it's somebody else's training. He's overseeing it, but he's not the one setting out the cones or anything.
Am I right in believing that he when he goes from one job to another, I'm talking about Ange here, he doesn't take, normally the manager takes all the same backroom staff. He doesn't believe in doing that. He takes new people on. So, maybe that might be an issue in itself, having different people at every time.
So at the start of his career, there was an assistant manager he worked with on a regular basis who followed him to every club he went to, including when he went out to Greece for a short-lived stint. But that manager has since got a job in Japan. Before Ange got a job out in Japan, that assistant manager got a managerial job of his own out in Japan as well, and he's now carved out a career for himself. Since then, as far as I'm aware, there's been no team that follows Ange around like Poch does. Poch has, a team of 3 to 4 people who go with him everywhere and are currently working in the United States. So if we were to get rid of Ange and bring in Poch, you can guarantee who our assistant manager would be, and our fitness trainer and our goalkeeper coach, because it's the same people that were there before. But that is a concern of mine. I will admit there are concerns with Ange. I've got. I happen to think he's great. I think he's a superb guy. I do have concerns that he's not bringing in experienced people. Everyone that comes in seems to be relatively inexperienced at some point, apart from the 2 guys that came in over the summer. You got Millie Jedinak, Ryan Mason, other people, Matt Wells. They're all pretty young. So with that, is there enough base of experience to set up the squad properly for the kind of season that we need, or not? But if there isn't, then can we bring in more people later to boost that later on?
Look, Ange feels like he doesn't feel like he doesn't need specialist people to carry out what he needs to do, and these guys are young and willing. Obviously you look at Pochettino, he has his 3 musketeers right next to him. So warming to see those guys and how tight they are. But I'm sure Postecoglou could have the facility to bring people if he needed them, and I don't think it's necessarily because he doesn't. I don't know. There must be. It's just a personal preference, isn't it? I think he's done. There's so many great things about Postecoglou. It's obviously where we're at right now, 2 cups in 1 week, going out. The position of the Premiership. I just feel like any other manager would have crumbled at this point. He just seems to have this incredible spirit that, just away from the assistants at this point. Working with him must be amazing. I know Joe Hart and other people have got great things to say about Postecoglou. He might not have yet actually been able to demonstrate in the Premiership yet. And it's a huge step up from anything he's done before, of course. But in terms of mentality, whether he says mate at the end of his sentences or not, he is a strong person. And I think that in terms of the culture of the club, if he's given enough time, then he will have an impact on it, from top to bottom. I do feel like, thanks, mate. I do feel like, I do feel like he will gain more and more control over the playing staff, the backroom staff, and all these guys. He will have that time to do that. Who knows, in the next couple of weeks, months before the UEFA, if he feels like he has time now, I feel like we've been through the dark night of the soul. I keep saying this. We've been through the darkest part I can remember of being a Spurs fan. There's been pretty bad times at the beginning of the 2000s. John, I'm sure you'll attest, but there hasn't been a time like this where I've honestly felt so helpless, really. Really scratching the barrel for good things to say. But I will say that if we can get through this, the sort of you talk about the Archie Grays and the Bergvalls and the Mikey Moores and everything, but there's other players in that team as well who would have absolutely who have gone through hell in the past 2.5 months, and we really have to just sort of, raise a glass to those guys a little bit. I think Postecoglou's trying to do that in his presses, even though he's getting bombarded with like, aren't you this, aren't you that? Why aren't you attacking anymore and all these things? And he's just about to flip his lid and just flip the table most of the time. I think it's commendable.
I'll get that impression.
He clearly doesn't suffer fools gladly, does he? Postecoglou. But again, like five players back this week. Let's just say by the time the Europa starts up again, we've got most of our squad back together again. It could be a perfect storm. Although last year we finished the year meekly. I feel like we have something to play for this time. It could be a perfect storm in that sense. And I think we'll just be better for what we've just been through. I really do. And if he can still be there, I think that it could be a really good, strong end to the season. I think a lot of people are putting a lot of hope on that.
I have to be honest. I mean, you have more faith in Ainge than I do now. I mean, I like the guy in Villa, but when I see like Bournemouth or Fulham play, and to me, they look at a very well coached team, very well set up, and change tactics depending on who the opposition may be. I don't really see that. If I'm honest, I don't really see that with Ainge. And I know some of it's bravado, and he says, "I never change, mate," and all that kind of rubbish. Or like the thing, when he said, like, they kept asking him about getting a defensive coach and all this lot. They tried to make it. He said, "I don't have a defensive coach." So they tried to say that he doesn't practice corners and stuff. Of course he does. But what I'm sort of going off the point, and that is that I just see, when I see Bournemouth play, and you look at their results against the big teams this season, they've been phenomenal, really, this season. And the same goes for Fulham in many respects. Maybe their results, fun enough, actually, probably not so good against the lesser teams. But they've been to me, they are well coached. And I see that more from them than I do from Ange, if I'm honest.
Again, they do have the opportunity to get on the training ground and do proper coaching, though, which Ange just isn't getting the time to do because we're playing every 3 days. It's
he didn't have that problem.
Situation, isn't it?
He didn't have that problem last season. I mean, last season was the fewest games in my lifetime going to Tottenham was the fewest games we've ever played. We've now no Europe. Yes. And we played three domestic cup games, and that was it.
Yeah, no, last season was it's kind of gone from famine to feast. Last year was the smallest number of games, and this year it's going to be huge. I mean, this is one of the few silver linings. It's one of the few silver linings of going out of the cups at this point. Is we're going to have a bit more time on the training ground. We're going to have a chance to get players back fit and hopefully get some energy back into them, because we've just been running these players into the ground. Let's talk about some players. I have talked highly about Archie Gray this season. I thought for the first time this season against Aston Villa, Archie Gray actually looked like an 18-year-old midfielder playing at centre-back. He did not look particularly great. He had some good moments, but overall there was shakiness there. Just knackered. Me or anybody else? Knackered. I mean, he's played so many games.
Yeah. That's simply it's to be expected. Unfortunately, these players are knackered. They've done remarkably well. To me, as I said, him and Bergevall in particular, and lately because Spencer's now come back into the team, they've been the bonuses to me. Again, Ange just said this, that in the experience that they've gone through will hold them in good stead in their career later on down the line. So hopefully, that there will be much more, in a much more settled team. I'm dying to see Gray in midfield, which is his main position, But to me, he's definitely been a positive.
Oh no, he absolutely has. I mean, I'm pretty sure I said last week that he looks like a seasoned veteran. He looks like a player who should be 26, 27 years old, not 18. But also, Charlie pulled me up on it a few weeks ago. I said that, in a few years' time, we will look back in it look back on this season and say this was the season that Lucas Bergvall came through, and Charlie was like, "Oh, I don't know about that." He's absolutely right. No, this is the season we're going to look back and go, "That was the year we got Archie Gray," because Archie Gray has been the standout player simply because he's just been so reliable and so good. It's amazing what he's been able to do as an 18-year-old kid. I mean, Lucas Bergvall, I think, has been excellent. I thought he actually improved the side when he came on yesterday. But at the start of the season, he was a little bit dicey, a little bit ropey.
Yeah, he looked lightweight.
Yeah,
He looked lightweight, but he's now settled into the team, and I think he's been a real plus point. Out of interest, I mean, what's your take on Romario? I mean, me personally, I think, is he really that injured, or is he just playing good daddy with his newborn, and he's just waiting for the end of the season, and he's going to be off to Real Madrid?
I definitely think the Real Madrid thing is an issue. Charlie and Ashley, I think we've all talked about this before. Real Madrid just seems to be sat there waiting in the background to take him over at some point in the summer. And when you look at players like Kevin Danso coming in, kind of seems set up for him to come in and take that spot next year, or maybe we'll spend big on a Mark Gay. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I felt that was a sort of. I mean, the Mark Gay thing felt to me like he called up the Palace chairman and goes, what won't you accept? 70. Okay, well, we'll bid for that. And it looked good. That's a little bit cynical, but I mean, it does look like. I mean, it's on the last day. I mean, they could have done it a little bit before. Couldn't put in a counter bid.
Apparently, the news came out on the last day. It was actually done 2 or 3 days before that, but the news came out on the last day.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, here's the thing, and John, I don't know. Spiritually, I don't think Romero's at the club. I haven't seen anything from him since he was very vocal about the hierarchy almost 3 months ago now, I think. And there's been a lot. I mean, the injured guys have been sort of like on the bench cheering the boys on. I've seen it multiple times. I haven't seen hide nor hair of Romero. I can't believe he's back in Argentina or anything. My fear is that he's played his last game for Spurs. We might see him, but this niggling sort of thigh injury that they talk about seems to get him pushed and pushed and pushed. I just wonder if there's already been a deal put down, and that's why we're suddenly bidding large on defenders, preparing people for the worst. I just don't know why it's being so. If that's the case, I don't know why it's being so dealt with so clandestinely. I think it would probably be better for all of us if we were a little bit more in the light, and that goes for everything.
Well, do you think it's a deal, or do you think it's him? Because I get that feeling, a bit like Lo Celso was like that as well. That come next month when the internationals kick in, and no doubt probably Argentina have got a match. He will somehow miraculously be fit enough to probably go off to Buenos Aires and play for them. It's sad, but I mean,
it wouldn't be the first time.
At the end of the day, he's not been that great this season anyway. In truth,
he hasn't.
He's a little bit wily, isn't he? He's a little bit wily, Romero. Maybe he's had his kid and he's like, you know what? I don't want to be playing for a club that sort of doesn't reach his sort of lofty ambition and miss out on this time with my kid if I'm going to get injured. I don't know. It has that feel to it to me. It feels like spiritually he's not there. Hence why we are making bids for defenders left and right. I mean, he's not at the club anymore. It's tough to say that. And I think Ash and we spoke about it, like 6 months ago when he was captain for the day, or 2 or 3 games, and we lost a couple of games. That didn't look good, but there was just a presence around the team when he was captain that we didn't get with Sonny. It was just like all right, Christian's like he felt like a cat. He didn't say much. It was just like he was a leader. He's sort of born for the role, a bit like Sergio Ramos kind of deal. We can get onto the captain issue. I think it's a huge issue. I can't believe Sonny's playing all these games and still captain. I guess because he has to, because there's no one else. But it's again we've got everything back to front. I can't understand why. It's just a lot for me right now to talk about that situation without it sidetracking.
You're you're not cynical on him extending his contract, Sonny. That's you know, whilst he's still at the club, all the South Koreans will flock to White Hart Lane because he's their man, isn't he?
Absolutely, but I don't think he should be first choice left wing. I can't believe we haven't invested in the front line. You know, the front line has been, you know, again, it's with Mattis Tell, it was a reactionary sort of signing, and I just feel like we're so short in so many areas now because we haven't been proactive in sort of replacing people like Son and you know, I don't know, other players.
Harry Kane.
Which does bring us on nicely to Mattis Tell. What were your thoughts? I thought until he moved into the centre, he looked good, but was basically ineffective.
I've seen nothing about him now that's made me go, wow. I mean, he scored not a bad little goal yesterday, but other than that, I can't really say. You know, we've got one good ball over yesterday, but I can't say I thought so far well about him. And also, again, a bit like Romario. I mean, I sort of think to myself, you know, does he really think he's going to be here in the long term? You know, I suspect he really, you know, that what they're suggesting is that he wants to go to Manchester United, and that's probably where he'll end up next season if he does well. If he does well with us.
You know, we could have a front line of Tell, Odegaard, and Solanke within a month, and that looks, you know, that could be a frightening prospect. I look at that, and I'm like, pace, youth, and endeavour, and you know, potentially goals as well. I think he could do very well, and then especially if we go on a Europa run, then great. I don't think he'll stick around next season, but I think Postecoglou certainly seems to have intimated that he thinks he'll be a Spurs player next year. Maybe he will. Who knows? Depends how we do in the next sort of 3 or 4 months. I think a lot will ride on that.
Well, Europa League is
in the Europa League squad.
Yeah,
he's in Europa League squad, so there's a chance if he can fire us to Europa League glory. I think he might decide he wants to stick around and see what he can do in the Champions League next year. This is a little story.
At least he's got Spence in the squad as well now as well. He hasn't admitted him. Who's the other person? There was only 3 people that can answer the squad. So, who?
Danso.
Oh, that's
Danso,
right. Yeah.
Kevin Danso.
Right, yeah.
So here's a little story you guys might like. So I was watching the match with my oldest boy, who's 8 years old, coming up 9, and watching the match, and he was like, "Oh, this isn't looking good, is it, Dad?" And I was like, "No, well, you know, there's still time." And we got to the 85th minute, and we had a half chance, and we scuffed it. And I just looked and I went, "Oh yeah, that's it. We're not going to win now." And my 8-year-old looked at me and he went, "You think?" Yeah, thank you, Teddy. So yeah, there you go. Even an 8-year-old could recognise the game was done at that point.
Out of the mouth of babes.
Out of the mouth of babes, indeed. But yeah, okay. So you know, we talked about Archie Gray. We touched on Lucas Berreval. Mikey Moore didn't have his best game, I thought. He struggled a little bit. Struggled to get into the game. I do think he always does better on the left, and frankly, I thought potentially he deserved to stay on more than Sonny did, because I thought Sonny was having a very poor game. Maybe that's just me. Ash, what were your thoughts on all of that?
I don't think he's fully grown yet, you.
So what was that?
Mikey Moore.
I think he's still going through puberty. It's hard to watch. He's
17. He will still be growing.
An extra on Oliver, you know, like he's such a little chappy, you know. He doesn't look. I mean,
Dodger.
he looks like a top prospect, but he's not a man yet. And I can't obviously say that Archie or Lucas are either, really, but they are, I think, further along.
Very, very, very few.
Archie is 6'3".
No.
Archie is 6'3".
And
he's tall, but he's built like a reed. I mean,
Yeah, Bergvall is like 6'2" as well. So we got some big lads. Hey, sometimes not much.
Young players, they have to be blooded into a team. Generally speaking, very few have got those physical attributes at such a young age. And one of the very few I can ever think about was somebody like Rooney and somebody like Dele Alli, who took it in their stride, didn't they? You know, when they came in, burst into the